The dust hadn't even settled from Clara Bennett's winning bid when she saw the color drain from the auctioneer's weathered face. And in that moment, standing in the scorching July heat of Redemption, Texas in 1882, she knew she had made either the bravest or most foolish decision of her 22 years. The auction house fell silent except for the creak of wooden floorboards as folks shifted uncomfortably in their boots. Clara stood there clutching her bidding paddle, her dark hair escaping its pins in the humidity, her cotton dress sticking to her back. She had just outbid Marcus Thornton for 300 bushels of prime wheat grain, and from the horrified expression surrounding her, she might as well have signed her own death warrant. "Sold to Miss Bennett," the auctioneer finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper. He brought down his gavel with a sound that echoed like a gunshot through the tension. Clara's heart hammered as she made her way to the payment table, her legs somehow carrying her forward even though every instinct screamed at her to run. She had needed that grain desperately. Her father's general store depended on it, especially with the summer drought making supplies scarce. The railroad had been delayed for weeks, and this auction represented the only significant grain shipment within 200 miles. But Marcus Thornton was not a man you crossed in Redemption. As Clara counted out her money with trembling fingers, she felt the weight of 100 stares boring into her back. The townspeople began filing out quickly, their boots scuffing against the wooden floor in their haste to distance themselves from what had just transpired. She heard whispered conversations floating back to her. "Someone needs to warn her. Poor girl doesn't know what she has done. Thornton will have her head for this." The coins clinked against the table as Clara completed her payment, accepting the receipt with as much dignity as she could muster. Her father had been bedridden for 3 weeks with a fever, leaving her to manage the store alone. She had made the decision to come here today to bid on the grain that would keep their shelves stocked and their customers fed through the harsh summer. She had not anticipated that Marcus Thornton, who owned half the farmland in the county and ruled Redemption with an iron fist backed by money and intimidation, would want the same lot. Clara stepped out into the blinding Texas sun, squinting against the brightness. Main Street stretched before her, a dusty ribbon lined with false-fronted buildings that seemed to shimmer in the heat. The town had grown quiet, unnaturally so for midday. Even the usual piano music from the saloon had stopped. She clutched her receipt and began the walk back to Bennett's general store, her footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. The grain would be delivered tomorrow morning. All she had to do was survive until then. "Miss Bennett." The voice came from behind her, and Clara froze. She turned slowly to find herself face to face with a man she had never seen before. He was tall, perhaps 6 feet, with sun-bronzed skin and the kind of lean, muscular build that came from hard work rather than leisure. He wore dusty trail clothes, a worn leather vest over a faded blue shirt, and a Stetson hat that had seen better days. His eyes, though, were what caught her attention. They were a startling shade of gray-blue, like storm clouds over the prairie, and they held a mixture of concern and something else she could not quite identify. "Yes?" Clara managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "Name is Cole Harrison," he said, touching the brim of his hat in a gesture of respect. "I am a cattle driver, just passing through. Was in the auction house when you made your bid." He paused, glancing down the empty street. "I think you should know that folks are saying Marcus Thornton is going to be mighty displeased when he hears about this." "So I have gathered," Clara said, lifting her chin. "But the auction was fair and square. I had every right to bid." Cole's mouth quirked into something that might have been admiration. "That is true enough, miss, but rights and reality do not always align out here." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Thornton was delayed this morning. His horse threw a shoe about 5 miles out of town. He sent his foreman to bid on that grain, but you outbid him. Word is already spreading, and Thornton is on his way back now." Clara's stomach dropped, but she refused to show fear. "Thank you for the warning. Mr. Harrison, I appreciate your concern." She turned to leave, but Cole's hand shot out, not touching her but blocking her path. "Miss Bennett, I do not think you understand. Marcus Thornton is not just going to be angry, he is the kind of man who makes examples out of people who cross him. And from what I have heard, no one in this town is going to stand up to him on your behalf. The truth of his words hit Clara like a physical blow. She looked around at the closed doors and drawn curtains of Main Street. The same neighbors who smiled at her in church, who bought their supplies from her father's store, who had known her since she was a child, they were all hiding. No one was going to help her. "Then I suppose I will have to handle this myself," Clara said quietly. "It is my father's store, Mr. Harrison. Without that grain, we will lose customers to the mercantile in Silver Creek. We will lose our livelihood. My father is ill, and we have no other income. I had to make that bid." Cole studied her for a long moment, and Clara found herself unable to look away from those storm cloud eyes. There was something solid about him, something dependable that seemed in short supply in Redemption today. "Where is your store?" he finally asked. "2 blocks east, on the corner of Main and Birch?" "I will walk you there," Cole said, and it was not a request. They walked side by side through the oppressive heat, their shadows stretching long across the dusty street. Clara was acutely aware of Cole's presence beside her, the easy confidence in his stride, the way his hand rested near his holstered revolver. Not threateningly, but ready. "You said you are a cattle driver?" Clara asked, desperate to fill the silence with something other than her own anxious thoughts. "Yes, ma'am. Been driving cattle up from South Texas to the railheads in Kansas for the better part of 6 years now. We brought a herd up to Dodge City last month, and I'm on my way back down to join up with my crew for the next drive." "That sounds like hard work." "It is," Cole agreed, "but it is honest work. And there is something about being out on the open range, under the stars, that settles a man's soul." He glanced at her sideways. "Though I imagine running a general store has its own challenges." "It does," Clara admitted, "especially when your only parent falls ill and you are trying to manage inventory, customers, and accounts all by yourself while nursing him back to health." They reached the store. A sturdy building with a painted sign that read Bennett's General Store, established 1871 in faded letters. Clara's father had built this business from nothing, and she would not let it crumble while he lay helpless upstairs. "Thank you for the escort, Mr. Harrison," Clara said, turning to face him on the wooden boardwalk. "I should check on my father." Cole hesitated, his hat in his hands now, revealing dark brown hair that curled slightly at his collar. "Miss Bennett, I do not mean to overstep, but I would feel better if I stayed nearby. At least until Thornton shows up and you two have a chance to talk this through." "That is very kind, but you said yourself that you were just passing through. You do not owe me anything." "No," Cole agreed. "But my mama raised me to believe that standing by while a woman faces danger alone is not something a decent man does. And seeing as how every other man in this town seems to have forgotten that lesson, I figure I will stick around." Clara felt a lump form in her throat. She barely knew this man, yet he was offering her more support than her own community. "I do not want you to get hurt on my account." "I can handle myself," Cole said with a small smile. "Been in my share of tight spots. Besides, I have a feeling you're worth standing up for." The way he said it, simple and sincere, made Clara's cheeks flush. She nodded, not trusting her voice, and unlocked the store door. The interior was dim and cool compared to the street, smelling of wood, spices, and dry goods. Shelves lined the walls, stocked with everything from canned goods to fabric to tools. A long counter ran along one side, and behind it, a doorway led to the back room and the stairs to the living quarters above. "I need to check on my father," Clara said. "Please, help yourself to anything you need. There's water in the barrel by the counter." She hurried up the narrow staircase to the small apartment above the store. Her father lay in his bed, his face pale and drawn with fever. Clara placed a cool cloth on his forehead and checked his temperature. It was still high, but no worse than this morning. The doctor had said it was a severe summer fever and that rest and fluids were all they could do. "Papa," she whispered, though she knew he would not hear her in his fevered sleep. "I got the grain, but I may have made things very difficult for us." She stayed with him for a few minutes, making sure he was comfortable, then returned downstairs to find Cole examining a display of rope and ranch supplies with the practiced eye of someone who knew quality when he saw it. "Your father keeps good stock," Cole observed. "He takes pride in it," Clara said. "Every item in this store has been carefully chosen. He believes in selling things that last, even if it means lower profit margins." "A man of integrity," Cole said. "That is rare." Before Clara could respond, the sound of hoofbeats thundered through the quiet afternoon, multiple horses approaching fast. Clara's blood turned to ice as they stopped directly in front of the store. Cole moved to the window, peering out through a gap in the curtain. "5 men," he reported quietly. "The one in front is big, well-dressed. That would be Thornton?" Clara joined him at the window and immediately recognized the imposing figure dismounting from a black stallion. Marcus Thornton was a large man, over 6 feet tall and broad-shouldered, with a thick dark beard shot through with silver. He wore expensive clothes, a tailored suit that seemed absurd in the Texas heat, but was meant to set him apart from common folk. 4 of his ranch hands flanked him, all armed, all looking like the kind of men who enjoyed enforcing their boss's will. "That is him," Clara confirmed, her mouth dry. The door burst open with such force that the bell above it flew off its hook and clattered to the floor. Marcus Thornton filled the doorway, his face red with rage, his eyes wild. "Where is she?" he bellowed. "Where is the little fool who thinks she can steal from Marcus Thornton?" Clara stepped forward, her legs shaking but her voice steady. "I am here, Mr. Thornton, and I did not steal anything. I won a fair auction." Thornton's gaze locked onto her, and Clara felt the full weight of his fury. He strode toward her, his boots heavy on the wooden floor, and for a terrible moment she thought he might strike her. But Cole moved, positioning himself between them with a casualness that belied the protective intent. "The lady is right," Cole said calmly. "The auction was fair. She had every right to bid." Thornton's eyes flicked to Cole, assessing this unexpected obstacle. "Who the hell are you?" "Name is Cole Harrison. I am just a concerned citizen making sure this conversation stays civil." "This is none of your concern, drifter," Thornton spat. "This is between me and the Bennett girl." "I am not a girl," Clara said, her fear transforming into anger. "I am a grown woman running a business, and that grain is mine, legally purchased." Thornton's laugh was ugly, without humor. "You have no idea what you have done, little girl. That grain was meant for my farms, for my workers. Do you know what happens when Marcus Thornton does not get what he needs?" "I know what happens when Bennett's general store does not get supplies, Rhea," Clara shot back. "We close. My father and I lose everything. So yes, I bid on that grain, and I will not apologize for it." The tension in the room was suffocating. Thornton's ranch hands had filed in behind their boss, hands resting on their gun belts. Clara could see the muscles in Cole's jaw tighten, but he remained calm, a solid presence at her side. "You're going to sell me that grain," Thornton said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, "right now. I will give you what you paid for it, not a penny more." "It is not for sale," Clara said. "Everything is for sale, girl. Name your price." "I said it is not for sale. I need that grain for my store." Thornton took a step closer, and Cole shifted to block him more fully. The 2 men were similar in height, but Thornton had 50 pounds of bulk on the leaner cowboy. The ranch hands tensed, ready to back their boss if this turned violent. "Last chance," Thornton growled. "Sell me that grain, or you will regret it." "Are you threatening her?" Cole asked, his voice still calm, but with an edge of steel now. "I am stating facts. This town depends on my goodwill. My ranch employs half the men here. My money keeps businesses open. If Bennett's general store were to suddenly find itself without customers, well, that would be unfortunate but understandable. Folks tend to shop where I tell them to shop." Clara's heart sank. He was right. Thornton had the power to destroy her father's business without laying a hand on either of them. All he had to do was spread the word that Bennett's was off limits, and the store would be finished. You are a coward, Cole said quietly, hiding behind money and intimidation instead of accepting when you have been fairly beaten. The room went dead silent. No one spoke to Marcus Thornton that way. The ranch hands actually gasped. Thornton's face turned purple with rage. You just made the biggest mistake of your life, Cowboy, Thornton snarled. No one calls me a coward in my own town. It is not your town, Cole said. It belongs to all these people who are too afraid to stand up to you. But I am not from here, and I am not afraid of you. Thornton's hand moved toward his gun, but Cole was faster. His revolver was out and leveled before Thornton could clear leather, the movement so smooth and practiced that it was clear this was not Cole's first confrontation. I would not, Cole advised, and I would suggest your men keep their hands where I can see them. The ranch hands froze. Clara could barely breathe. This had escalated far beyond what she had anticipated. Someone was going to get killed, and it would be her fault. Stop, Clara said, her voice cutting through the tension. Please, everyone, just stop. She stepped around Cole, ignoring his muttered protest, and faced Thornton directly. Mr. Thornton, I understand you are angry. I understand you feel I have wronged you, but I am not your enemy. I am just trying to save my father's store. Then sell me the grain, Thornton said through gritted teeth. I cannot. But perhaps we can reach a different arrangement. Clara's mind raced, searching for a solution. What if I sold you half the grain, 150 bushels? I keep the other half for my store. We both get what we need. Thornton stared at her as if she had grown a second head. You think you can negotiate with me? I think we can both be reasonable adults and find a compromise that works for everyone, Clara said, her voice stronger now. You get grain for your workers. I get grain for my customers. No one has to get hurt. No one has to lose their livelihood. Cole had not lowered his gun, but Clara could feel his surprise at her offer. Thornton looked torn between rage and grudging respect. 2/3, Thornton finally said. I get 200 bushels. You keep 100. Deal, Clara said immediately, knowing that 100 bushels would be enough to keep the store supplied for the next 2 months until the railroad shipments resumed. Thornton nodded slowly, then glared at Cole. Holster that weapon, Cowboy. After you and your men leave, Cole said, and I will be watching to make sure you keep your word about this deal. I do not need a drifter to tell me how to conduct business, Thornton snapped, but some of the fury had drained from his voice. He turned back to Clara. I will send my men to collect my share when the grain is delivered tomorrow. And Miss Bennett, do not ever cross me again. You may not be so lucky next time. He stormed out, his ranch hands following, and the store seemed to exhale in relief. Clara's legs gave out and she sank into a chair behind the counter, her entire body shaking with delayed fear. Cole holstered his revolver and knelt beside her. Are you all right? I think so, Clara managed. That was terrifying. You handled it perfectly, Cole said, his voice warm with admiration. That was smart thinking, offering a compromise. Most people would have either caved completely or gotten themselves killed trying to fight. I was absolutely certain we were all about to die, Clara admitted, her voice shaky. When you called him a coward, I thought my heart would stop. Cole had the grace to look sheepish. That may have been a tactical error on my part. He just made me so angry, threatening you like that. Clara looked up at him. This stranger who had risked his life for her. Why did you do it? You do not even know me. You could have been killed. I told you, Cole said simply. My mama raised me right, and besides. He paused, seeming almost embarrassed. When I saw you standing there in that auction house, holding your ground even when everyone else was too afraid to look at you, I thought you were the bravest person I had ever seen. Stupid maybe, but brave. And I do not know, something in me could not just walk away. Their eyes met, and Clara felt something shift in her chest. This man, this stranger, had seen her, not as foolish or reckless, but as brave. In that moment, surrounded by the familiar smells of her father's store, Clara felt a connection to Cole Harrison that defied logic or reason. Thank you, she whispered, For everything. Cole smiled, and it transformed his face from merely handsome to genuinely beautiful. You are welcome. Now, about that grain delivery tomorrow. I think I should stick around just to make sure Thornton keeps his word. You do not have to do that. Your crew is waiting for you. They will understand if I am a day or two late. Besides, Cole stood and stretched. I have not had a real bed or a hot meal in weeks. If you know of a boarding house in town, I could use the rest. Clara stood as well, making a decision that probably was not wise but felt absolutely right. We have a spare room upstairs. It is not much, but it is clean and has a decent bed. You could stay here. I could make you that hot meal as a thank you. Cole looked surprised, then pleased. I would not want to impose. After what you just did, you could never impose. Please, I would feel safer with you here, at least until the grain situation is resolved. All right then, Cole agreed. I accept your generous offer, Miss Bennett. Clara, she said, please call me Clara. Only if you call me Cole. They smiled at each other, and Clara felt warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the Texas heat. She showed Cole to the small spare room, which had been her mother's sewing room before she died 5 years ago. It held a single bed, a washstand, and a small dresser, but it was neat, and the linens were fresh. I will go prepare dinner, Clara said from the doorway. Come down whenever you're ready. She spent the next hour in the small kitchen above the store preparing a meal with shaking hands. The encounter with Thornton had rattled her more than she wanted to admit, and she kept replaying the moment when Cole had drawn his gun. He had been so fast, so certain. She wondered what kind of life he had led to develop such skills. Cole appeared in the kitchen doorway as the sun was beginning to set, casting golden light through the windows. He had cleaned up, washing the trail dust from his face and hands, and his hair was damp at the edges. Something smells wonderful, he said. Just stew and cornbread, Clara replied, ladling the food into bowls. Nothing fancy. Trust me, after months of eating beans cooked over a campfire, this is a feast. They sat at the small table, and for a few minutes ate in comfortable silence. Clara found herself stealing glances at Cole, studying the lines of his face, the way his hands moved, capable and sure. She had never felt this way about anyone before. This immediate pull toward another person. Tell me about cattle driving, Clara said, wanting to know more about him. What is it like? Cole leaned back in his chair, his expression becoming distant as he remembered. It is hard work, the hardest I've ever done. You are up before dawn in the saddle all day, dealing with unpredictable weather, river crossings, stampedes, and cattle that are about as smart as fence posts, but there is something about it that gets into your blood. The freedom of the open range, the camaraderie with your crew, the satisfaction of successfully bringing a herd to market. It sounds lonely. It can be, Cole admitted. We are out on the trail for months at a time. You miss things like real beds, home cooking, and conversation with people who are not exclusively focused on cows. He smiled. And you miss the company of intelligent women who outbid grain tycoons at auctions. Clara laughed, feeling some of the tension drain from her shoulders. I am not sure intelligence had anything to do with it. Desperation, maybe. Do not sell yourself short. What you did took courage and quick thinking. Both are forms of intelligence. They talked long into the evening, sharing stories about their lives. Clara told him about growing up in the store, about her mother's death from pneumonia, about taking over more and more responsibilities as her father aged. Cole spoke of his childhood in Missouri, his decision to head west after his parents died, his years on the cattle trails. Do you ever think about settling down? Clara asked as they cleared the dishes. Having a place of your own instead of always moving? Cole was quiet for a moment. Sometimes, but I never found a place that felt like home, you know, or a reason strong enough to stop moving. The way he looked at her when he said it made Clara's pulse quicken. She busied herself with the dishes, trying to calm her racing heart. I should check on my father, she said. Make yourself at home. There are books in the sitting room if you want something to read. Her father's fever had broken slightly, and he stirred as Clara entered the room. His eyes opened, confused and unfocused. "Clara?" His voice was hoarse. "I am here, Papa." She helped him sit up and gave him water. "The auction. Did you get the grain?" "I did, Papa. Everything is taken care of." He relaxed back against the pillows. "Good girl. I knew I could count on you." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. If he only knew what she had risked, what had nearly happened. But he did not need that burden while he was fighting his fever. When she returned downstairs, she found Cole standing at the window, looking out at the darkened street. He turned as she entered. "How is he?" "Better, I think. His fever has dropped a little." "That is good." Cole hesitated, then said, "Clara, I need to be honest with you. I do not think Thornton is done. The way he looked when he left, that was not a man who accepts defeat gracefully, even a partial one. I think he's going to cause trouble." "What kind of trouble?" "I do not know. But I think we should be prepared. Tomorrow, when that grain arrives, there could be problems. Thornton might try to take more than his share, or he might try to sabotage your delivery." Clara felt the fear return cold in her stomach. "What do we do?" "We stay alert. We make sure the grain is counted and divided exactly as agreed before Thornton's men take their portion. And if there is any trouble, you let me handle it." "Cole, I cannot ask you to fight my battles." He crossed the room to stand in front of her, close enough that Clara could see the flecks of silver in his blue eyes. "You are not asking, I am offering. And I want you to know that I do not offer this lightly. I have been drifting for 6 years, not letting myself care too much about any one place or any one person. But today, watching you stand up to Thornton, talking with you tonight, I feel something I have not felt in a long time." "What is that?" Clara asked, barely breathing. "Like maybe I found a reason to stop moving." The air between them seemed charged with possibility. Clara wanted to lean forward to close the distance between them, but fear held her back. Fear of moving too fast, of reading the situation wrong, of losing this fragile connection they had formed. "I feel it too," she admitted instead. "This connection between us. I do not understand it, but I feel it." Cole reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. When she did not move, his hand cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing along her cheekbone. The touch sent electricity through Clara's entire body. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Cole said softly, "I want you to know that meeting you has been the best thing that has happened to me in years." "Cole," Clara whispered, and then his lips were on hers, gentle and questioning. She responded without thinking, her hands coming up to rest on his chest, feeling the solid warmth of him through his shirt. The kiss was sweet and slow, full of promise and possibility. When they pulled apart, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "I should let you get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." "Stay?" Clara said, then blushed. "I mean, stay here in the sitting room with me. Just talk with me a little longer. I do not want to be alone tonight." They settled on the small sofa, and Clara found herself tucked against Cole's side, his arm around her shoulders. They talked in low voices about everything and nothing, dreams and fears, until Clara's eyes grew heavy. She fell asleep there, feeling safer than she had in months, with Cole's steady heartbeat beneath her ear. Clara woke to pale dawn light streaming through the sitting room windows. She was still on the sofa, but someone had draped a blanket over her. Cole sat in the chair across from her, already awake, watching the street through the window. "Did you sleep?" Clara asked, sitting up and stretching out the kinks in her neck. "A few hours. Old habit from the trail. I wake with the sunrise." Clara checked on her father, who was sleeping peacefully with a much cooler forehead, then made coffee and breakfast. They ate quickly, tension building as they waited for the grain delivery. It arrived at 8 in the morning, a large wagon pulled by 4 horses. The driver was a grizzled man named Pete, who made regular deliveries for the auction house. His expression was grim as he pulled up in front of the store. "Miss Bennett," he greeted. tipping his hat. Got your grain here. But I should warn you, there was some men hanging around the depot this morning, Thornton's men. They were asking questions about this delivery. We are expecting them, Clara said, her stomach tight with nerves. Mr. Thornton and I reached an agreement. He is taking 2/3 of the shipment. Pete looked relieved. That is good to hear. Folks were worried there would be trouble. Cole and Pete began unloading the grain sacks, stacking them on the boardwalk in front of the store. Clara counted carefully, making sure all 300 bushels were accounted for. They had just finished when hoofbeats announced the arrival of Thornton's men. 4 ranch hands rode up, led by a hard-looking man with a scar across his cheek. He swung down from his horse and surveyed the stacked grain with calculating eyes. I am here for Mr. Thornton's grain, he announced. 200 bushels, Clara said firmly. That was the agreement. The foreman, whose name Clara had learned was Jack Reeves, smiled unpleasantly. See, about that. Mr. Thornton has reconsidered. He figures since you caused him so much trouble yesterday, you owe him the full amount, plus a penalty. That was not the agreement, Cole said, stepping forward. Your boss said 200 bushels. That is what he gets. I do not take orders from some saddle tramp, Reeves snarled. We are taking all of it. The other 3 ranch hands dismounted, forming a loose semicircle. Pete, the delivery driver, quietly moved his wagon away from the confrontation. Clara's heart pounded. This was exactly what she had feared. You are not taking anything beyond what was agreed, Cole said, his voice calm but his stance ready. 200 bushels. We have already counted them out and separated them. It was true. Clara had carefully divided the grain into 2 piles on opposite ends of the boardwalk while they unloaded. Reeves's hand moved toward his gun. Last chance, cowboy. Walk away. Not happening. The moment stretched impossibly long. Clara could barely breathe. 4 armed men against Cole. The odds were terrible. Then a voice rang out from down the street. I would not do that if I were you, Reeves. Everyone turned to see a figure walking toward them, backlit by the morning sun. As he drew closer, Clara recognized him as Marshal Tom Wilson, the town's lawman. He was an older man, in his 50s, with gray hair and a lined face. He had always been friendly but quiet, rarely interfering in Thornton's business. Clara had assumed he was in Thornton's pocket like everyone else. Marshal, Reeves said, surprised, this does not concern you. When 4 armed men threaten a citizen of this town, it concerns me, Wilson said, his hand resting on his own gun. Miss Bennett legally purchased that grain at auction. She has generously agreed to sell Mr. Thornton 2/3 of it. That is what he gets. Nothing more. Thornton owns this town, Reeves blustered. He says we take it all. Thornton does not own me, Wilson said coldly, and he does not own the law. Now you boys can take your 200 bushels peacefully, or I can arrest all 4 of you for attempted theft and intimidation. Your choice. The ranch hands looked at each other uncertainly. Reeves's face was red with anger, but he was not stupid enough to draw on a marshal. After a tense moment, he nodded curtly. Fine. We will take the 200, but Thornton is not going to be happy about this. Then Thornton can come talk to me about it, Wilson said, peacefully. The loading of Thornton's grain took 20 minutes, during which the marshal stood watch. When the ranch hands finally rode off with their loaded wagon, Clara felt her knees go weak with relief. Thank you, she said to Wilson. I thought you would not get involved. The marshal looked uncomfortable. I will be honest with you, Miss Bennett. I have turned a blind eye to Thornton's bullying for too long. Told myself it was easier to keep the peace than to make waves. But what you did yesterday, standing up to him, it shamed me. Reminded me why I took this badge in the first place. It is supposed to mean something. It does mean something, Cole said, extending his hand. Cole Harrison, thank you for backing us up. Wilson shook it. You were the cowboy who stood up to Thornton in the store yesterday. Heard about that. Took guts. He looked between Cole and Clara. You two should know that this is not over. Thornton does not forgive or forget. You will need to watch your backs. We will, Clara promised. After the marshal left, Clara and Cole worked together to move her 100 bushels into the store's back room, stacking them carefully. It took several trips and left them both sweaty and dusty. But by noon, all the grain was safely stored. Clara locked the store's back door and leaned against it, exhausted. Cole was wiping his face with a handkerchief, his shirt sticking to his back. "We did it," Clara said, hardly believing it. "We actually did it." Cole grinned at her. "You did it. You stood up to the biggest bully in town and won. You should be proud." "We did it together. I could not have managed without you." They stood there in the dim back room, surrounded by sacks of grain and the dust motes dancing in the sunlight that streamed through the high window. Clara was suddenly very aware that they were alone, that Cole was looking at her with an expression that made her breath catch. "Clara," he said, his voice rough, "I need to tell you something." "What?" "I was supposed to leave today, head back south to meet my crew, but I do not want to go." Clara's heart skipped. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that in the space of one day you have become more important to me than anything else. I know it is crazy. I know we just met. But I feel like I have been wandering all these years looking for something, and I just found it. I found you." Tears sprang to Clara's eyes. "I feel the same way, like you walked into my life exactly when I needed you, and now I cannot imagine you walking back out of it." Cole crossed the space between them in 2 strides, pulling her into his arms. This kiss was different from the gentle one last night. This was hungry and desperate, full of relief and joy and the beginnings of something powerful. Clara wrapped her arms around his neck, losing herself in the sensation of being held, being wanted, being safe. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole said, "I want to stay in Redemption. I want to see where this goes between us, but I need to go back to my crew first, settle my accounts, collect my pay. It will take me maybe 2 weeks." 2 weeks, Clara repeated, hating the thought of him leaving even temporarily. "What if you do not come back? What if you change your mind once you are away from here?" "I will come back," Cole said fiercely. "Clara, I swear to you on everything I hold dear, I will come back. Nothing could keep me away from you." Over the next 3 days, Cole and Clara spent every possible moment together. He helped her run the store, charming customers with his easygoing manner and quick smile. In the evenings, they would sit with her father, who was recovering slowly but steadily. Clara told him about Cole, about how he had protected her, and her father gave his tentative blessing to their courtship. "He is a good man," her father said, studying Cole with the sharp eyes of someone who had judged character for 50 years. "I can see it in how he looks at you, how he treats you. But Clara, be careful. A man who has spent 6 years drifting might not find it easy to stay in one place." "He will stay," Clara said, believing it with her whole heart. On Cole's last night before he had to leave, they took a walk along the edge of town as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The summer heat had broken slightly, and a cool breeze carried the scent of sage. "I am going to miss you," Clara said, holding his hand as they walked. "I know it is only 2 weeks, but it feels like forever." "I am going to think about you every minute I am gone," Cole said. "Think about your smile, your courage, the way you make me want to be a better man." "You are already a good man, Cole Harrison." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "Clara Bennett, I know we have not known each other long. I know I should probably wait, be more proper about this, but I have never been good at doing what I should do. And life on the trail has taught me that tomorrow is not guaranteed. So I'm going to say this now, even though it is crazy, even though you might think I have lost my mind." "Say what?" Clara asked, her heart racing. "I love you. I have fallen completely, hopelessly in love with you. And when I come back from settling things with my crew, I want to court you properly. I want to build a life with you here in Redemption. I want to marry you if you will have me." Clara felt tears stream down her face, but they were happy tears. "I love you too. I know it is fast and crazy, but I do. I love you, Cole. And yes, when you come back, I want all of those things." Cole kissed her then, pouring everything he felt into it. They stood there as the sun disappeared below the horizon and the first stars began to appear, holding each other, making promises for a future that suddenly seemed bright and possible. Cole left at dawn the next morning. Clara stood on the boardwalk outside the store, watching him ride away on his horse, his saddlebags packed with supplies she had insisted on giving him. He turned back 3 times to wave, and each time Clara waved back, trying to memorize the sight of him. When he finally disappeared over a rise, she went back inside and tried to focus on her work. The store was busier than it had been in weeks, word having spread about her confrontation with Thornton. Surprisingly, many customers seemed to be coming specifically to support her, making a point of buying their goods from Bennett's instead of other merchants. "Heard what you did," old Mrs. Jameson said as Clara wrapped up her purchase of flour and sugar. "About time someone stood up to that bully Thornton. You have more spine than most of the men in this town." "Thank you," Clara said, genuinely touched. But not everyone was supportive. Some of Thornton's friends and employees made their displeasure known by loudly taking their business elsewhere. And then there were the anonymous threats that started arriving on the 3rd day after Cole left. The first one was slipped under the store's door during the night, a piece of paper with crude handwriting that read, "You made a mistake crossing Thornton. Leave town while you still can." Clara showed it to Marshal Wilson, who took it seriously, but admitted there was little he could do without evidence of who had sent it. "Keep your doors locked at night," he advised, "and let me know if anything else happens." The second threat came 2 days later, this time nailed to the store's door. "We are watching you. One wrong move, and you will regret it." Clara tried not to let it frighten her, but she started jumping at every sound, checking the locks multiple times before bed. Her father was well enough now to notice her nervousness. "What is wrong, Clara?" he asked one evening as they ate dinner. She showed him the notes. His face darkened with anger and concern. "This has to stop. Maybe we should consider selling the store and moving somewhere else, somewhere safer." "No," Clara said firmly. "This is our home, our livelihood. I will not let Thornton bully us out of town." But as the days passed and Cole did not return, Clara's confidence began to waver. It had been 12 days. He had said 2 weeks. But what if something had happened? What if he had changed his mind? What if she had imagined the depth of his feelings? On the 13th day, a man came into the store that Clara had never seen before. He was rough-looking with cold eyes and a cruel mouth. He did not buy anything, just browsed slowly, watching Clara in a way that made her skin crawl. "Can I help you find something?" she finally asked. "Just looking," he said, his voice oily. "Nice store you have here. Would be a shame if something happened to it." "Get out," Clara said, her voice shaking with fear and anger. He smiled unpleasantly. "You should listen to the warnings you have been getting, Miss Bennett. Mr. Thornton is a patient man, but his patience has limits. I said get out." The man laughed and sauntered toward the door. "I will be seeing you again." As soon as he left, Clara ran to find Marshal Wilson. The lawman listened to her story with a grim expression. "I will have a word with Thornton," he promised. "This has gone too far." But Clara knew that a word from the marshal would not stop Thornton. He wanted her to suffer for embarrassing him, and he would not stop until she was broken or gone. That night, Clara lay in bed unable to sleep, listening to every creak of the old building. She kept thinking about Cole, wishing desperately that he was there. It had been 13 days. He had said 2 weeks. Maybe tomorrow he would return. The sound of breaking glass shattered the silence. Clara bolted upright, her heart pounding. The noise had come from downstairs, from the store. She grabbed the rifle her father kept by the door and crept down the stairs, her hands shaking. The store was dark except for moonlight streaming through the windows. One of those windows was broken, glass scattered across the floor. And there, lying among the shards, was a burning torch. Clara screamed and ran for the water barrel, grabbing a bucket. The torch had already started to catch on a display of fabric, flames licking hungrily at the dry material. She threw water on it, then ran back for more. Again and again she made the trip, her nightgown soaking, her bare feet bleeding from the broken glass. The fire was spreading faster than she could control it. Smoke filled the store, choking her. She heard her father shouting from upstairs but could not leave the fire. If it reached the grain in the back room, the whole building would go up. Then suddenly there were hands on her shoulders, pulling her back. Strong arms wrapped around her, and a familiar voice shouted in her ear, "I have got you! Get outside!" "Cole," Clara sobbed, but she fought against him. "The fire! The store! I will handle it. Go!" More people were arriving now, roused by the commotion. Townspeople formed a bucket brigade, passing water from the pump down the street. Marshal Wilson organized them, shouting orders. And through the chaos and smoke, Clara saw Cole working with desperate intensity to beat back the flames. It took an hour to fully extinguish the fire. By the end, a corner of the store was badly damaged and the acrid smell of smoke permeated everything, but the building still stood. Clara sat on the boardwalk wrapped in a blanket someone had given her, watching numbly as people worked to make sure no embers remained. Cole emerged from the store, his face black with soot, his clothes ruined. He spotted Clara and immediately came to her, dropping to his knees in front of her. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, his hands running over her arms, checking for injuries. "Clara, talk to me. Are you hurt?" "My feet," she managed. "I stepped on glass." Cole gently lifted her feet and swore at the cuts he found there. "We need to get these cleaned and bandaged. Can you walk?" "I think so. Cole, you came back. You came back exactly when I needed you." "I will always come back to you," he said fiercely. "Always." He carried her inside the damaged store and up to the apartment, where her father was pacing frantically, still weak from his recent illness but recovering. Between the two men, they cleaned and bandaged Clara's feet while she told them everything that had happened in Cole's absence. The threats, the strange man, Thornton's continued harassment. Cole's expression grew darker with every word. When she finished, he stood and paced to the window, his hands clenched into fists. "This ends now," he said. "I am going to have a talk with Marcus Thornton." "No," Clara said quickly. "Cole, he will kill you. Or have you arrested. You cannot just confront him." "I am not going to just confront him. I am going to make him understand that if he comes after you again, he will answer to me." "That is not a good idea," Clara's father interjected. "Thornton has too much power. He could destroy you." "He could try," Cole said, and there was something in his voice that made both Clara and her father pause. "But I'm not the same as the other people in this town. I have nothing to lose except what matters most to me, and that is Clara. I will not stand by while he terrorizes her." Marshal Wilson arrived at that moment, climbing the stairs heavily. He looked exhausted and angry. "Miss Bennett, I'm sorry. We found a man near the outskirts of town with soot on his clothes and the smell of kerosene on him. He is refusing to talk, but I would bet my badge Thornton put him up to this." "Can you arrest Thornton?" Clara asked hopefully. "Not without proof," he gave the order. "And this man is not talking. I can hold him for arson, but that is all." Wilson rubbed his face tiredly. "I am going to be honest with you. I do not know how to stop Thornton. He is too powerful, too well connected. Even with this clear attempt on your property, I cannot touch him." "Then I will," Cole said. "You will get yourself killed, son," Wilson warned. "Maybe. But I would rather die trying to protect the woman I love than live knowing I did nothing while she suffered." Clara's heart squeezed at his words. Even his fear for him overwhelmed her. "Cole, please. There has to be another way." Cole knelt beside her again, taking her soot-stained hands in his. "Clara, listen to me. I spent 6 years drifting because I had nothing to fight for, nothing worth staying in one place for. But you are everything. You are brave and strong and good, and you deserve to live without fear. So I am going to make sure you can do that." "How?" Clara whispered. "Trust me. I have an idea, but I need you to trust me." Despite her fear, Clara nodded. She did trust him with everything she had. Cole spent that night at the store keeping watch while Clara and her father tried to rest. In the morning, after ensuring Clara was comfortable and her father was watching over her, Cole put on his cleanest shirt, checked his revolver, and headed out. But he did not go to Thornton's ranch. Instead, he went to the telegraph office and sent several messages. Then he visited the town's newspaper office, speaking at length with the editor. By noon, he had talked to nearly every business owner on Main Street. Clara, confined to a chair with her bandaged feet, grew increasingly anxious as the day wore on without word from Cole. Her father tried to distract her by taking inventory of the fire damage, but her thoughts kept circling back to Cole and whatever plan he was executing. He returned just before dinner, looking grimly satisfied. "What did you do?" Clara asked immediately. Cole pulled up a chair and sat across from her. "I sent telegrams to the territorial governor's office and to newspapers in Austin and San Antonio detailing Thornton's campaign of intimidation and the arson attack. I also spoke with the editor of the Redemption Herald. He is going to run a story about Thornton's attempt to force you out of business through threats and violence." Clara stared at him. "Cole, that is brilliant. Thornton cares about his reputation. If word spreads that he is a bully and a criminal, it could hurt his business interests." "That is the idea. I also talked to the other merchants in town. Told them that if they band together, they could stand up to Thornton. Individually, he can destroy them, but together they have power. They agreed to sign a petition demanding that the territorial authorities investigate Thornton's business practices. Will it work? I do not know," Cole admitted. "But it is better than doing nothing. And I made sure everyone knows that any further attacks on you or your family will bring even more scrutiny down on Thornton. He is a businessman first. He will not risk his empire just to settle a grudge if it means losing everything." Over the next few days, Cole's plan began to bear fruit. The story in the Redemption Herald caused a sensation, with people discussing it in hushed tones everywhere Clara's father went to make inquiries. The telegrams to Austin and San Antonio resulted in responses from officials promising to look into the matter, and most importantly, Marcus Thornton had gone very quiet. Clara's feet healed quickly, and within a week, she was back to running the store with Cole as a constant presence at her side. He had officially given up cattle driving, he told her, and was looking for work in Redemption. "I have some money saved from my years on the trail," he explained as they worked together to repair the fire damage. "Not a lot, but enough to buy a small piece of land outside town. I was thinking I could try ranching on a small scale, raise some cattle of my own." "That sounds wonderful," Clara said. "But Cole, are you sure? You loved the freedom of the trail." "I love you more," he said simply, "and I am ready to put down roots. With you, if you will have me." It was not a formal proposal, not yet, but it was a promise. Clara threw her arms around him, not caring that they were both covered in sawdust. "I will have you," she said, "today, tomorrow, always." 2 weeks after the fire, Marcus Thornton rode into town alone. He tied his horse outside Bennett's general store and walked in, his expression unreadable. Clara was at the counter, and Cole was in the back room. She felt her mouth go dry as Thornton approached. "Miss Bennett," he said, his voice neutral, "I have come to speak with you." "About what?" Clara asked, proud that her voice did not shake. "And about calling a truce." Clara blinked in surprise. "A truce?" Thornton looked uncomfortable, a rare expression on his usually arrogant face. "Your cowboy is smarter than I gave him credit for. The attention he has brought down on me is proving costly. I have had territorial investigators asking questions, buyers getting nervous, partners reconsidering their associations with me. It is bad for business." "I am sorry to hear that," Clara said, "not sorry at all." "I am sure you are," Thornton said dryly. He pulled an envelope from his jacket and laid it on the counter. "This is compensation for the damage to your store from the fire. I am not admitting any involvement, you understand, but I want to make things right." Clara opened the envelope and gasped. Inside was enough money to not only repair the damage, but to expand and improve the store. "I do not understand," she said. "You won, Miss Bennett," Thornton said, and for the first time, there was a hint of respect in his voice. "You stood up to me when no one else would, and you found a way to fight back that I did not anticipate. I am a businessman. I know when to cut my losses." He tipped his hat. "I am withdrawing my objections to your ownership of that grain. I am ceasing all harassment, and I would appreciate if you could convince your cowboy to call off his campaign against me." "I will talk to him," Clara said, stunned. "Good. Oh, and Miss Bennett? For what it is worth, you're going to do well in business. You have the spine for it." He left before Clara could respond. She stood there holding the envelope, hardly believing what had just happened. Cole emerged from the back room. "I heard everything. Well. Marcus Thornton actually backing down. I did not think I would see the day." "We did it," Clara said, starting to smile. "Cole, we actually did it. We stood up to the most powerful man in town and won." They came together in the middle of the store, holding each other, laughing with relief and joy. Over the following months, life in Redemption settled into a new rhythm. Clara used Thornton's money to repair and expand the store, adding new inventory and hiring a part-time assistant to help now that business was booming. People respected what she had done, and that respect translated into loyalty. Cole purchased 20 acres of land outside town and started building a small ranch house with his own hands. Clara would visit him there in the evenings after closing the store, bringing dinner and sitting with him as the sun set over the prairie. They would talk about their plans for the future, about the life they would build together. "I want at least 3 children, Cole said one evening as they sat on the porch of his half-built house. "Maybe 4 if you are willing." "4 children," Clara laughed. "You do realize they require a lot of work?" "I grew up with 5 siblings. I know exactly how much work they require, but I also know how much joy they bring." 3 sounds reasonable, Clara said. 2 boys and a girl. Or 2 girls and a boy. Or all boys. Or all girls. I will be happy with whatever we get as long as they are healthy and you are safe. Clara leaned her head on his shoulder, content in a way she had never been before. Everything she wanted was right here, within reach. 6 months after Cole returned to Redemption, on a crisp November morning in 1882, Cole Harrison married Clara Bennett in the small church at the edge of town. Marshall Wilson gave Clara away since her father was still regaining his strength, and the entire town turned out for the ceremony. Even Marcus Thornton sent a wedding gift, an expensive set of china that Clara suspected was his way of cementing their truce. The reception was held at the store, which Clara had closed for the day. There was music and dancing and more food than anyone could eat. Clara wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully preserved and altered to fit her. Cole wore a new suit that Clara had helped him pick out, and he could not stop smiling all day. "I cannot believe you are mine," he whispered to her during their first dance. "Sometimes I think I'm going to wake up, and this will all be a dream." "It is not a dream," Clara whispered back. "This is real. We are real, and we have our whole lives ahead of us." They moved into Cole's ranch house, which he had finished just in time for the wedding. It was small but sturdy, with a bedroom, a main room with a fireplace and kitchen area, and a loft that would eventually become children's rooms. Clara kept running the store, with her father taking on more responsibilities again as his health improved. Cole worked his land, slowly building his herd with cattle he bought from other ranchers. Life was not always easy. There were droughts and hard winters, difficult customers, and failed crops, but they faced everything together, drawing strength from each other. At night, they would lie in bed and share their dreams, making plans, telling stories, simply enjoying being together. Their first child arrived in late 1883, a healthy boy they named Daniel. Clara had been terrified of childbirth, but Cole had been there through all of it, holding her hand, whispering encouragement, looking at her like she was the bravest person in the world. When the midwife placed Daniel in Clara's arms, she saw tears streaming down Cole's face. "He is perfect," Cole breathed, gently touching their son's tiny hand. "Clara, you are amazing! You gave me a son!" "We made him together," Clara said, exhausted but happier than she had ever been. Daniel was followed 2 years later by twin girls, Emma and Sarah. The pregnancy had been difficult, and the birth even more so. For a few terrifying hours, the midwife was worried they might lose Clara, but she pulled through. And when Cole saw his 3 children together for the first time, his 2-year-old son peering curiously at his new baby sisters, he broke down completely. "I do not deserve this," he said, holding Clara's hand as she recovered. "I do not deserve you or these beautiful children. I am just a drifter who got lucky." "You are not a drifter anymore," Clara said firmly. "You are a husband, a father, a rancher, and a member of this community. You earned every bit of this happiness, Cole Harrison. Do not ever think otherwise." The years passed in a blur of joy and challenges. Daniel grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved helping his father with the ranch. The twins were wild and adventurous, always getting into trouble and making everyone laugh. Clara's father passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1887, leaving the store entirely to Clara. She renamed it Bennett and Harrison General Store, making Cole a full partner. Cole's ranch prospered. He never became as wealthy as Marcus Thornton, but he made a good living and earned the respect of other ranchers. He hired help during busy seasons, always treating his workers fairly, paying them well. Word spread that Harrison Ranch was a good place to work, and Cole never lacked for reliable hands. In 1889, Clara gave birth to their 4th and final child, another boy they named Thomas. By then, Clara was 31 and Cole was 33. They felt blessed beyond measure with their 4 healthy children, their successful businesses, and their strong marriage. The children grew up hearing the story of how their parents met, how their mother had been brave enough to outbid the most powerful man in town, and how their father had been the stranger who stayed to protect her. It became a family legend, embellished and retold at every gathering. "Tell us again about the fire," Daniel would beg when he was young. "Tell us how Papa saved Mama." "We saved each other," Clara would always correct. "That is what people who love each other do." Marcus Thornton mellowed with age, and over the years he and Cole developed a cautious respect for each other. They would never be friends, but they were cordial neighbors. When Thornton suffered a stroke in 1893, it was Cole who rode to his ranch to check on him and make sure his affairs were in order. "You are a better man than I ever was, Harrison," Thornton admitted from his sickbed. "Take care of this town when I am gone." Thornton died a week later, leaving his empire to distant relatives who had no interest in Texas ranching. They sold off most of his holdings within a year. Cole bought some of the land, expanding his ranch considerably. Other locals bought more, distributing Thornton's former monopoly among many owners. Redemption became a more balanced, healthier town as a result. As the 19th century drew to a close, Cole and Clara found themselves entering middle age as respected pillars of their community. Cole served on the town council. Clara was active in the church and the newly formed Redemption Ladies Society. Their children were growing into fine young people. Daniel, at 16, was already talking about taking over the ranch someday. The twins, at 14, were inseparable and had just started teaching at the small schoolhouse. Thomas, at 10, was showing signs of inheriting his mother's business acumen and his father's charm. On their 15th wedding anniversary in November 1897, Cole and Clara took a rare evening away from their children, asking Clara's assistant to watch them. They rode out to the place where Cole had built his first house, where they had spent so many evenings planning their future. The original small house was now a storage building, replaced by a much larger home that accommodated their growing family. But the porch where they had sat and dreamed was still there, weathered but sturdy. They sat together as the sun set, just like they had 15 years earlier. "Do you ever regret it?" Clara asked, "giving up the trail, settling down?" Cole looked at her with such love that it made her breath catch, even after all these years. "Not for one single second. That day I walked into the auction house and saw you standing there so fierce and brave, that was the day my real life began. Everything before was just me waiting to find you." "I feel the same way," Clara said. "You saved me, Cole, in every way a person can be saved." "You saved me right back," Cole said, pulling her close. "You gave me a home, a family, a purpose. You gave me everything." They sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned from orange to purple to deep blue. Stars began to appear, the same stars that had witnessed their first declarations of love 15 years earlier. "What do you think the next 15 years will bring?" Clara mused. "More of the same, I hope, watching our children grow and thrive, growing old together. Maybe grandchildren eventually, though I'm not ready to think about that yet." Clara laughed. "Neither am I. They are still babies in my mind." "They are growing up so fast," Cole agreed. "Sometimes I look at Daniel and I cannot believe he is the same tiny infant we brought home from town 16 years ago." "He has your strength," Clara said. "All of them do, and I hope they have learned from our example that standing up for what is right, even when it is hard, is always worth it." "I think they have," Cole said, "just like their mother." They stayed out there until the moon rose, talking about everything and nothing, simply enjoying being together. After 15 years of marriage, they were still each other's best friend, still each other's greatest love. The years continued to roll by, bringing all the joys and sorrows that life entails. They celebrated weddings as their children grew and married, wept together when Daniel was injured in a ranching accident but recovered, rejoiced at the birth of each grandchild. Daniel married a sweet girl named Rebecca from Silver Creek in 1902 and took over most of the ranch operations, allowing Cole to slow down. Emma surprised everyone by moving to Austin to attend the teaching college there, becoming one of the few women from Redemption to pursue higher education. Sarah married the Newtown doctor and stayed in Redemption, continuing her teaching while raising a family. Thomas eventually took over the store from Clara, showing the same instinct for business and customer relations that had made Clara successful. By 1910, Cole and Clara were both 52 years old and grandparents 7 times over. They had slowed down considerably, leaving most of the work to their children and hired help. They spent their days enjoying each other's company, taking slow walks around the property, visiting with grandchildren, and simply being together. One evening in the summer of 1910, they sat on their porch watching the sunset, as they had done thousands of times before. Clara's hair was now more silver than dark brown, and Cole's face was deeply lined from years in the sun. But when they looked at each other, they saw the same people they had been at 22 and 24, young and scared and falling impossibly in love. "Do you know what today is?" Clara asked. "Wednesday," Cole said with a grin. Clara swatted his arm playfully. "It is the anniversary of the day we met. 28 years ago today, I outbid Marcus Thornton at an auction, and you walked into my life." "Best day of my life," Cole said immediately. "Well, tied with our wedding day and the births of our children, and about 1,000 other days I have spent with you." "I was so scared that day," Clara admitted. "Standing in that auction house, knowing I had just made an enemy of the most powerful man in town, I thought my life was over." "But it was just beginning," Cole said. "We both were." "We built a good life, did we not? A good family?" "The best," Cole confirmed. "Clara, if I could go back and change anything about my life, I would not. Every choice I made led me to you, and that makes everything worth it." Clara felt tears prick her eyes, the happy kind. "I love you, Cole Harrison. I loved you then, I love you now, and I will love you forever." "Forever," Cole echoed, taking her hand and bringing it to his lips. "That is exactly how long I plan to love you." They sat together as the sun disappeared and the stars emerged. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built something lasting. Around them, their children and grandchildren went about their lives, the legacy of that one brave decision Clara had made in an auction house 28 years earlier. The grain that had caused so much trouble was long gone, used and replaced dozens of times over. Marcus Thornton was just a memory now, his empire dissolved, his threats meaningless. But Clara and Cole remained, their love stronger than ever, proof that sometimes taking a risk and standing up for what you believe in can lead to everything you have ever wanted. As fireflies began to dance in the growing darkness, Clara rested her head on Cole's shoulder, feeling his steady heartbeat beneath her cheek. This was home, not the house or the land, but this feeling of safety and love and belonging. Cole was her home, and she was his, and no matter what the future held, they would face it together. "Ready to go inside?" Cole asked eventually. "In a minute," Clara said. "Let us stay here just a little longer. I want to remember this moment." "Every moment with you is worth remembering," Cole said. And so they sat, two souls intertwined, watching the stars appear one by one in the vast Texas sky, grateful for the auction, the grain, the fear, and the stranger who had walked into a young woman's life exactly when she needed him most. Their love story had started with a bid and a warning, but it had grown into something beautiful and lasting, a testament to courage, faith, and the power of two people who chose each other against all odds. Years later, when their great-grandchildren asked them about how they fell in love, Clara and Cole would smile at each other with the secret knowledge of two people who had lived a full life together. They would tell the story again about the auction and the grain and the powerful man who learned that some things matter more than money or influence. But mostly, they would talk about love, about finding the person who sees you at your bravest and your most afraid and loves you all the same. About building a life based on mutual respect and support, about choosing each other every day through good times and bad. The town of Redemption grew and changed around them, but Cole and Clara remained constant, a reminder that true love could not only survive but thrive, even in the harsh environment of the Wild West. Their story became part of the town's folklore, told and retold, inspiring other young people to be brave, to stand up for themselves, and to believe that love was worth fighting for. When Clara finally passed away in 1925 at the age of 67, surrounded by her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, Cole held her hand just as he had held it on that first day they met. He whispered that he loved her, that she had made his life worth living, that he would find her again someday. Cole followed her 6 months later, unable to live long without his other half. They were buried side by side in the Redemption Cemetery, under a shared headstone that read, "Clara and Cole Harrison. They stood together when no one else would." Their children and grandchildren continued their legacy, running the ranch and the store, serving the community, and telling the story of how two brave people had fallen in love during a dangerous summer in 1882. The story of the auction, the grain man, the cowboy who stayed, and the love that grew from courage and defiance. It was a story worth remembering, worth sharing, worth celebrating, because it proved that sometimes the scariest moments in life lead to the greatest joys, and that standing up for what is right, even when everyone is afraid to help you, can lead to finding everything you have ever wanted. In Redemption, Texas, the legacy of Clara and Cole Harrison lived on long after they were gone, a testament to the power of love, courage, and choosing to stay when it would have been easier to leave. Their great-grandchildren would walk past the general store, now much expanded but still bearing the Harrison name, and feel proud of what their ancestors had built. The story of how it all began with a young woman's desperate bid at an auction and a cowboy's decision to protect her remained the favorite tale told at family gatherings, each generation adding their own embellishments while keeping the core truth intact. That love was worth fighting for, that courage could change everything, and that sometimes the most important decision you ever make is to simply stay.